There are exactly 46 words in the post. 46 words posted to Truth Social at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, left live for 22 minutes, and then deleted. Not archived, not corrected, not replaced with a clarification. Deleted in the specific, panicked register of someone who posted a thing, and then, in the 22 minutes it lived on the internet, watched it get screenshotted 4,000 times, and understood that the deletion was already too late, but that leaving it up would be worse. Jimmy Kimmel read all 46 words on air the following night. He read them slowly. He read them in the flat, unhurried voice of a man who understands that the funniest thing he can do with 46 words written by the most powerful person on the planet is simply read them aloud and let the audience do the rest. He paused in the middle. Not for comic effect, not for timing, but in the specific register of someone who has genuinely stopped to process a sentence and is giving the room a moment to catch up. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at the audience. The audience did the rest. What happened in that room is the subject of this video. But to understand why the crowd lost it, and why the losing of it was not simply funny, but was something more precise than funny, something closer to the specific release of an audience that has been holding something for a long time and has just been given permission to put it down. You have to understand the inventory of what Jimmy Kimmel and Donald Trump had been building toward each other for the 9 years before that Tuesday night. The inventory begins in 2015. Trump announced his candidacy in June of that year, and Kimmel was one of the first late-night hosts to dedicate sustained monologue time to what he immediately identified, not as a political story, not as a policy story, but as a performance story. Kimmel had spent 15 years studying the architecture of performance for a living. He had hosted the Oscars. He had hosted the ESPYs. He had run a talk show built on the specific craft of reading an audience and finding the exact sentence that releases the tension the room has been building since the previous sentence. He looked at Trump's announcement speech and saw a performer, not a politician, not a statesman, not a movement, but a man who had identified an audience, studied its pressure points, and built a set designed to hit every one of them in sequence. He said so, on air, in the flat, observational register of one craftsman reading another's technique and finding it simultaneously impressive and alarming. Trump did not post about Kimmel in 2015. He was busy. There were 16 other Republicans to dismantle, one per debate cycle, each one requiring a custom nickname and a specific line of attack calibrated to the thing that particular person's supporters were most afraid of losing. He had an inventory to build, and a primary to win, and a general election to survive, and he did not have time in 2015 to post about a late-night host who had identified his technique. By 2017, he had time. The first documented Trump post about Kimmel arrived after a monologue in which Kimmel described in the specific language of a man who watches a lot of television professionally, the way Trump used cable news as a mirror, tuning in not for information but for the specific confirmation of seeing himself reflected in the coverage, positive or negative, as long as the reflection was large and the chyron contained his name. Trump posted that Kimmel was a third-rate talent with a failing show, and that nobody watched him anymore. He said this about a program that had been renewed through 2022 and was averaging over 2 million viewers per night, figures that were available in a 30-second search, and that Trump had either not performed or had performed, and set aside in favor of the post he had already decided to write. Kimmel read the post on air the following night. He did not rebut the ratings claim. He did not produce the renewal contract or the viewership numbers or the demographic breakdown that would have made the factual correction easy and complete. He read the post in the flat, unhurried voice that would become his primary instrument for this specific genre of material. The voice of a man who believes and has verified through 15 years of audience work that the funniest thing you can do with a certain kind of statement is simply read it aloud to a room of people and let the statement do its own work. The audience laughed. Trump posted again. He called the show a disaster. He said the ratings were in freefall. He said Kimmel had no talent. He said it from the residence, in the all-capitals register that had become the most legible signal in the public record that something had landed close enough to require a response. Kimmel read that post too. Same voice, same pause, same audience doing the arithmetic. The inventory built across 2018 and 2019 in the specific rhythm of a feud whose two participants have completely different relationships with the format. Trump posts from a position of genuine agitation. The posts carry the specific metabolic signature of someone who is in the feeling while they are writing, who has not stepped back from the provocation and assessed it, who is responding to the heat of the moment in the heat of the moment. Kimmel performs from a position of prepared distance. He has read the post, slept on it, written around it, walked into the studio with the specific calm of someone who has converted the agitation of the original provocation into a usable instrument. The asymmetry is the engine of the feud. One man is always writing from inside the feeling. The other man is always performing from outside it. One man's posts are evidence of the feeling. The other man's monologues are evidence of having studied the feeling long enough to know which 46 words to read slowly and where to put the pause. The escalation came in two documented waves. The first was the Oscars. Kimmel hosted the 2017 Academy Awards, the ceremony at which Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway announced the wrong Best Picture winner in the single most documented live television error in the history of the broadcast, a moment that generated more cultural coverage in 72 hours than most films generate across their entire theatrical run. Kimmel was on stage. He managed the moment in the specific, unrehearsed register of someone who has been doing live television long enough to understand that the only way through a moment that has no script is to be more present than the moment, to stand inside it fully, without the performance of someone trying to manage it until the room finds its footing. Trump posted that Kimmel had done a terrible job hosting. He said the show was a catastrophe. He said it was the lowest-rated Oscars in years. He said the mistake was Kimmel's fault. The mistake had been made by two other people presenting an envelope that had been incorrectly prepared by a third party, a factual sequence available in every news report published within hours of the ceremony. Trump had either not read the reports or had read them and set them aside in favor of the post. Kimmel read the post on air. He said, "The man who watched the ceremony closely enough to have a specific opinion about my hosting performance does not appear to have watched the ceremony closely enough to identify who was holding the wrong envelope." He paused. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at the audience in the specific way he looks at an audience when he has placed a sentence in the room and is giving it time to finish its own work. The audience did not need more time. The second wave was more serious, and Kimmel's handling of it revealed something about the inventory of his character that the feud coverage tended to bury under the monologue clips. His son Billy was born with a congenital heart defect, a condition identified in the delivery room, requiring open-heart surgery at 3 days old, requiring subsequent surgeries across the following years. Kimmel went on air and talked about it. He talked about it in a specific register that was not performance, not the performed vulnerability of a television host sharing a personal moment for audience connection, but the actual, unmanaged vulnerability of a father who has been in a hospital waiting room watching a 3-day-old child go into surgery and has arrived at the studio still carrying the specific weight of that room. He talked about health insurance. He talked about what it means to have a child with a pre-existing condition in a country where coverage for pre-existing conditions is a legislative variable rather than a guaranteed constant. He talked about the specific terror of being a parent whose child's survival is contingent on coverage that a vote in the House of Representatives could remove. Trump attacked him. He called the monologue political. He called Kimmel a hack who was using his sick child for ratings. He posted it from the residence in the all capitals register and the specific choice of that register for that subject, a father discussing a 3-day-old child in open-heart surgery, landed in the public record with a weight that the previous posts about ratings and talent had not carried. Kimmel did not read that post in the flat, unhurried comedy register. He addressed it directly, in the measured voice of a man who has decided that this specific thing requires a different instrument than the one he normally deploys. He said, "My son has a heart condition." He said, "Every child deserves the same access to care that my son received." He said, "If you think that is political, I am happy to be political about it for as long as it takes." He paused. He did not adjust his jacket. He looked at the camera, not the audience, the camera, in the specific direct address of someone who is not performing for the room but is speaking to a single person through the room. Trump did not post about Billy Kimmel again. The inventory kept building. By 2023, Trump had called Kimmel a racist, a phony, a third-rate talent, a failing show host, a political hack, a mental case, and a disaster on 6 separate documented occasions. He had demanded that ABC apologize for Kimmel's content on 3 occasions. He had suggested the shows should be canceled, investigated, and reviewed by the FCC. Each demand was made from the residents, in the all capitals register, in the small hours of the morning. None of the demands was addressed by ABC. None of them was addressed by Kimmel with anything other than the post being read aloud in the flat, unhurried voice on the following night in the studio to a live audience that had been given the specific gift of hearing the most powerful person on the planet's 3 a.m. posts delivered in the register of a man who has slept since they were written. Then came the 46 words. Tuesday night, Truth Social, 11:47 p.m. The post was about Kimmel, specifically about an earlier monologue in which Kimmel had done something that the fabrication channels cannot replicate and the conventional political coverage cannot fully process. He had read, word for word, from the public record, a sequence of Trump statements made across a single week in chronological order, without editorial commentary, in the flat, unhurried voice of a man who understands that the statements are already the material and that adding anything to them would only reduce their effect. The sequence he read ran from Monday to Sunday, 7 statements, 7 days, each one contradicting the one made 4 days earlier. Not on different subjects, where contradiction is explainable as evolution, but on the same subject, the same policy, the same specific claim, in the specific pattern of a man who makes the statement that the room in front of him needs to hear and does not maintain an inventory of what previous rooms have heard. Kimmel read them in order. He read them without commentary. He read them in the voice of a man reading a document into the record for a jury that is perfectly capable of doing its own arithmetic. The audience did its own arithmetic. The 46-word Truth Social post that went up at 11:47 p.m. was Trump's response to that monologue. It was written in the all capitals register of someone who had been watching the clip, had watched the audience do the arithmetic, had watched the clip run on other platforms and accumulate views that the all capitals register was not going to reduce, and had reached the specific metabolic point at which the feeling required an outlet. He posted it. He posted all 46 words of it. It was live for 22 minutes. In those 22 minutes, it was screenshotted 4,000 times. Someone in the communications operation saw the screenshots multiplying and understood that the post contained something, a specific claim, a specific phrase, a specific admission embedded in the register of someone who is in the feeling while they are writing, that could not survive contact with daylight. The post was deleted at 12:09 a.m. At 12:09 a.m., 4,000 screenshots existed. Kimmel had the screenshots on his desk the following afternoon. He walked into the studio that evening the way he walks into every studio, without the performed energy of a man arriving with a revelation in the specific settled register of someone who has been doing this for 20 years and has learned that the audience can feel the difference between a man who is excited about his material and a man who has simply, completely understood his material and is now delivering it. He said, "I have something I would like to read to you." He picked up the paper. He read the 46 words. He read them in the flat, unhurried voice. He got to the specific phrase, the embedded admission, the thing that had made the deletion necessary. And he paused. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at the audience. He did not add a word. He did not add a gesture. He simply held the pause, the specific, extended, loaded pause of a man who has placed something in the room and is giving the room the full duration of its own reaction. The crowd lost it. Not the laugh of an audience that has been given a punchline, the specific, louder, more released sound of an audience that has been watching someone be right for a long time, about the ratings lie, about the Oscars misattribution, about the pre-existing conditions, about the 7-day contradiction inventory, and has just been handed the document that the person being wrong about all of it wrote themselves at 11:47 p.m. from the residence in the all capitals register, and then tried to make disappear in 22 minutes. You cannot delete a screenshot. You cannot unpost a post that 4,000 people have already photographed. You cannot ask the record to forget something simply because you have removed the original. The record is not a feed. It does not scroll past things. It holds them in order, with the timestamps attached, and the thing that was held in that studio audience when Jimmy Kimmel read 46 words that were supposed to be gone was not simply the laugh. It was the specific collective exhale of people who had been watching the record accumulate for 9 years and had just watched it deliver its finding to a room full of witnesses. Trump posted the following morning. He called the show third rate. He called Kimmel a total failure. He called the laughter fake. He did not mention the 46 words. He did not mention the deletion. He did not address the phrase that had made the deletion necessary. He posted in the all capitals register from the residence and moved on to the next subject. The 46 words remain in the record, in 4,000 screenshots, time-stamped 11:47 p.m., in the inventory of a 9-year feud between a man who writes from inside the feeling and a man who reads the writing from outside it, and in the specific, extended pause between the last word and the audience's exhale. which is the most honest account of what the record sounds like when it finally gets read aloud in a room full of people who have been waiting for someone to read it. Subscribe and hit the bell, because the next deleted post is already being written, and this channel will read it to you the same way, slowly, in order, with the pause exactly where it belongs.